Hi, welcome to Makeover Mondays LinkedIn Live edition. We are streaming live to LinkedIn and to Facebook. I'm Rosemary Ravenel, your host. I'm public speaker, public speaking coach, and media trainer. And this space is designed for you to improve your life on the small screen. My guests are creatives and communicators who are redefining the way we interact in virtual spaces and redefining what video conferencing is all about. And I'm very excited to introduce my guest. But first, I want to remind you that this is live for a reason. This is your opportunity to put your questions in the chat and we will get to them live. My guest today is very special, Keith Harmeyer. He's going to help us discover how to cast a charismatic presence on Zoom. Because Keith is a powerhouse public speaker, author, innovative thinker, problem solver, former ad agency creative director. He weaves in all of these aspects of his career. And in addition, he was an opera singer, musical stage performer, all of this combined into one amazing professional. He is founding partner of Smart Storming, which is a creative problem-solving system. I'm going to find out more about that in just a moment. Keith, welcome.
Thank you, Rosemary. It's great to be here, and it's good to see you, at least virtually. It would be nice to see you in the real world, but hopefully soon.
It will happen. Tell me, what is an innovative thinking catalyst as you define yourself?
Well, in my work at Smart Storming, what we really primarily do is work with companies that need their teams to be more creative in the way they approach their work every day in order to drive innovation. So literally, my partner and I teach a process that helps build confidence, helps provide skills and tools and techniques that people and teams can use to come up with more innovative ways of doing their work. So literally, we're a catalyst for more innovative thinking within organizations.
Mm. And how have you adapted some of those basic principles, which I think are fascinating, into the work you do as a speaker and for purposes of where we are right now onto the virtual stage?
Yeah, well, in a variety of ways, I think. So first of all, what you learn when you work, I worked in advertising for over 20 years in New York City advertising agencies. It was the highest pressure environment one could be in that industry. And my job was to come up with ideas every day, over and over again, when they were needed, on demand, not waiting for inspiration to arrive, but I had to provide the inspiration. So that discipline for all those years of learning how to do that has really transferred over both into looking at my own business and the way that I deliver value to people in this new environment, right? I've had to come up with ideas again for how to change and how to develop, but also teaching others how to do that at a time when we need it more than ever before has been really important.
Mm-hmm. And we were talking before we went live about how people still don't know how to use all of their assets, all of their abilities, all of their natural attributes to really energize the space. And how do you bring some of that stagecraft that you were a professional? How do you bring some of that into this small screen?
Yeah, so I started performing, in theater and plays, that sort of thing, at a pretty young age. I was a teenager, but I learned that discipline. And so still to this day, all through my career, I approached the work that I did with the discipline that's used in the theater or by actors, right? And so one of my favorite expressions about the work that we do, speaking, teaching, presenting, whether it's live or virtual, one of my favorite expressions is it's all theater. And that doesn't mean that it's made up or it's not real or it's disingenuous. What it means is that our success is dependent on how well we can engage an audience, keep their engagement, right? Keep them engaged and attentive and interested in what we have to say. And so in order to do that, I think we can approach it by learning some of the same skills that actors do, which is using everything at their disposal. Right? Their body, not just their words, but the way they use their body, the way they use their voices, the way they use props or costumes or whatever. We have to think of everything we do that makes an impact on those people on the other side of the room or the other side of the camera. how are we impacting them? Because everything we do or say does one of two things. It either supports our message or it detracts from it. So we want to make sure everything supports our message as much as possible.
Right. Now, tell me about, because many people don't quite understand the importance of how they set up their shots and how they use props or backdrops as you would use in a professional theater, how all those elements underscore your message.
Yeah, well, I think, again, as I said a minute ago, everything we do either supports or detracts. So when I teach classes on this and persuasive communication and presentation skills, one of the things I say is everything you do, consider for a moment, is this really helping my message? Is it really supporting my message, or is it getting in the way or even distracting from my message? So you have to really be critical. And that, again, that's what happens in the theater. Every move, every gesture, every movement that you make is considered for how it's going to move the story forward. So really, it's just teaching people to be discerning, to really think about what they're doing. I always say, if it doesn't help support your message, get rid of it, because it's really just getting in the way and confusing people.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I have to ask you the question because it comes up every time. Is virtual versus real? Which do you prefer and which serves you better?
Well, that's a great question. Which do I prefer? Oh, I'm a performer. Look, I love being in the room with people. I love sharing the energy. I love seeing people's responses and how they react to what I do. So obviously that's a positive thing for me. And by the way, what I really love most is training. When I'm really in the room teaching people and I can see them getting new understanding. Virtual is a little bit tougher, right? It's harder to read people's reactions. It's harder to read their body language. It's harder to get the energy from them that helps us move forward. So it's a little bit more challenging, but the principles are the same. How you approach it is really the same. You have to tweak the application of what we do, but we still have to keep people engaged and involved and keep our energy up so theirs is up. But it's a little bit more challenging in a virtual environment.
Now, what do you do to design a meeting or a training that's different in the virtual space than in the physical? In terms of I don't believe you can just take the template of the physical space and bring it into virtual. I think you would agree, but if so, how do you adapt it?
Yeah, so of course we all had to do that, those of us that worked in the physical world primarily before, right? And again, as I said, I do keynotes, but also training is a big part of our business. So the first thing, so a lot of these become practical considerations that you have to make that you just learn over time, right? From experience, because you begin to see what works and what doesn't. So for instance, our full day training programs, we realized pretty quickly that keeping people at a computer screen for 6.5 hours over the course of a day wasn't practical. We were losing people. The energy wasn't there. So now clients that want full day training, those are broken into 2 half days, right? So we broke those down. But we had to restructure our programs in order to make those adjustments. There were certain activities that really didn't work in the virtual world that we did in the physical world. So we had to rethink those and substitute some. But over time, we were able to make the adjustments and make everything work. So really, it was just really a little bit of trial and error and figuring out things as we went along, Rosemary.
Right. So if we were to summarize it in terms of how you need to adapt these models to a virtual space, shorter versus longer.
Shorter versus longer, shorter sections. We've sort of realized that about every 90 minutes or so, if you have people in a meeting or on a call, you need to give them a break. So if we do a half-day session, people are going to get one substantial break in the middle of that. And those are things that we've learned. But yes, shorter attention span people are going to have, so we have to accommodate that. And people will tend to lose people as the energy and engagement drops. So we need to build in engagement, interactivity, things that people could actually be doing so that we're not just droning on and talking to people endlessly.
Great. I want to get a little bit deeper on that very point, but I want to remind everybody watching to please post your questions in the chat comments. You can tell us that you love us. You can ask us any question, but we'd love to get your engagement. So on that note, Keith, tell me more about how you build engagement.
Wow. Okay. So, in our real world classroom training, we also had a very interactive and engaging program. So we really just took some of the same principles. One of those things is that we irrespective of how many people we have in the room, we end up breaking them down into smaller teams and having them work as table teams on various aspects. So we do the exact same thing in our virtual training now. We break them into smaller groups, send them to breakout rooms, give them instructions on what they should be doing while they're there. But that happens several times during the session, that they're actually working on a problem and testing some of the techniques we teach. We also use the chat extensively so that we're sharing ideas, we're collaborating, we're getting input from them throughout. So we try to do everything that we can to keep them engaged. The other thing, we were talking about this earlier, is we've started to request that everyone turn on their cameras. It might seem like a small thing, but when you're looking at a screen with nothing but people's names on it, and you can't see their faces, and we don't, and, more than likely they're sitting there doing something else while we're doing this. So we ask them, to the extent that they can, to leave their cameras on so that we can have a little bit more of an exchange of energy and interaction.
Right. Sometimes when I see people who don't see people on my screen, I say, well, I'm only going to assume that you must be under the table. If we were in a physical environment, you must be under the table because I can't see you. And sometimes that little prod gets people to turn on their cameras. So it's a discipline that you have to establish. And I think that it should be required at the time that you convene a meeting, right, to say, cameras on. Because otherwise we're missing out on so much. But we think so much about video obviously being such a heavily visual medium. It's obvious that our minds process visual information much more efficiently than auditory. But let's talk about the sound, because that's your expertise. You are a singer. You're an opera singer, which is another category of professional achievement. How do you use your voice, and how important is voice? How far can we go with voice if we're not professionals in this setting?
I think, obviously, I have some bias here, but I think that voice is extremely important. In fact, I've read, I don't have the data to the actual data to share, but that audio is sometimes brought up more often by audiences as things they have a problem with than video. So yes, this is obviously a visual, video-centric platform, but people forgive video that's not as perfect as they will audio. If you have audio that's muffled, or people can't understand you, or there's a lot of room noise and echo, it can be a real distraction. So first of all, the one thing I always say is make sure your audio is the best that you can manage to have it. Upgrade you have a condenser microphone in front of you. I have a good microphone. You don't have to spend a fortune on a microphone, but a better microphone. But I think the bigger thing, and I think what you're asking, Rosemary, is that how we use the voice. And it's really, my feeling is not that we have to use our voice differently in virtual. It's just the opposite. We should be using our voice very much the same as we would if we were live. I think a lot of people fall into that attitude that, well, they're sitting in front of their computer and there's a microphone there, so they can just be quiet, be more, less energy, and be a little quieter. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. This is already, as we said before, a platform that's difficult to engage. We need to do even more. So I say, use your voice the way you would live, and you don't have to scream, but modulate your voice. Use some expression, use some energy. Same with your body. I probably do it too much, but don't be afraid to use expressions or use your body as if you were in a meeting room, or on a stage, or in a conference room, or in a stadium. Whatever's appropriate, but whatever you can do to bring that energy to the table is going to help your message for sure.
Right. And what about vocal variety in terms of going higher volume, or for emphasis, and certainly the cadence and the rate of speech? Do you find those effective?
Absolutely. I believe the same principles apply when we're virtual as apply on on a platform or on the stage, right? Or in a conference room. So yes, don't be afraid to speak with a little more energy. Don't be afraid to get a little closer to the mic and speak a little quieter or more intimately in order to make a point. Whatever's going to work and help keep the audience, and I say the audience, right? The people on the other side of the camera,
Well,
whatever.
they are your audience, right? They are your audience.
They are your audience, right? Whatever role they actually play in the interaction. They might be your teammates, they might be an audience, but whatever it is, what can you do to keep them in the game? What can you do to keep them involved and interested and leaning forward? And by adding energy through your voice and through your body, you'll get more energy from them.
Right. People ask a lot how to interrupt. They don't want to be abrasive. They don't want to be perceived as rude, but sometimes people want to interject and they just don't know how to. What would you suggest?
That's an amazing question. I don't think I've ever been asked that or even considered it too much, but I think it is, again, one of the things that is a little bit more challenging in this environment, right? If we're in a conference room or in a meeting room, I can raise my hand. It's very easy. But when there are 15 little thumbnails of people up at the top of the screen, it's very difficult to see visually that somebody might have something to say. So I think, it's just just waiting until somebody takes a breath so that you can say, excuse me, I just want to share something or make a point. I think that, once again, it's one of the things that's a little bit more challenging. We just have to do our best to work within the environment we're in.
Right. Interesting. What is your feeling about props? I'm going to go a little bit off script now, because some people I've seen are actually bringing on little, I don't know, not hand puppets, but other objects, really more like a show and tell, to animate their shot a little bit. Have you had experience with that?
A little bit. There are a couple of things that we use in our training session. One is a thing called a Hoverman sphere, if you know what that is. It's one of these plastic devices that you open it up and expands, and then you close it and close it down.
Like a slinky of sorts. I mean,
that's right. It's like a ball that opens up and closes. But it's a prop that we use to as a metaphor to prove a point. So we've started trying to do that a little bit, so that we use those things. And look, as I said before, we're all figuring this out right now, right? We're trying to figure out how to be more effective in this environment. But try things. If they help support your message, great. If they don't, then it's not working for you, right? So if they become a distraction and they don't help further your message, then just be honest with yourself and that it's not working and take it out. But I say, if there's something that can make it more engaging, give it a try. See what happens.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I would guess, given the organization of your background, how you have used props and items that speak to who you are, the guitar and the sailboat and such, that you are very much a proponent of physical sets versus virtual.
Yeah, well, I figured that might come up. I mean, that's a touchy one. Here's what I believe. I believe that, first of all, your background is awesome, Rosemary. I think that once again, it's one element in your overall presentation, right? Your overall theatrical presentation, if you will. So consider what your background looks like. You don't have to have a beautiful Hollywood set, but think about what's behind you and how does it look, that it's not messy, and yes, that there are things there that maybe reflect who you are, maybe something interesting, like you said earlier, Easter eggs, right? There's a sailboat back there. I'm a sailor. Guitars, obviously, I'm a musician. I play the guitar and sing. My two books are back there on the shelf. A lot of us do that. So think about it. But I really believe everybody should have a suitable physical environment to speak in front of. Now, if you're in a situation in your home or wherever you are that you don't have a good background, then buy a screen or a little physical backdrop of some kind that you can put behind you. Don't rely on virtual, because if you don't have really good lighting and really a really sort of a nice plain back wall behind you, you're going to come in and out of the virtual background, and it's going to be a mess. So if you can make the virtual backgrounds work, that's fine, but don't depend on that. Have something physical behind that you feel comfortable and feel is supportive of what you're trying to get across.
Right. Like you become an amoeba, right?
Exactly, right.
Yes. How do you see us returning to some semblance of what we would consider normal. There's a lot of talk about hybrid meetings. What trends are you seeing unfold?
Well, look, I think everybody who works as broadly in this space of getting people together in a room to do whatever that is, right? Meetings, training, conferences, whatever. Everybody wants this to happen. So I think there's a lot of interest in making live events and live interaction come back. At the same time, I think the economic realities of that, the safety realities of that, as we've learned, right, are things that businesses and organizations and governments are going to be taking and keeping in mind. So I think, as you said earlier, Rosemary, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of hybrid things. I think that companies are not going to spend tons of money or not as much flying people around the world or across the country in order to get them all in the same room. But I think we'll see some of that and a lot more things going on virtually. So I believe that the speakers and the presenters and the coaches and the consultants who have learned to do this in a way that allows them to deliver value are the ones, obviously, that are going to do best moving forward. Because I don't think virtual is going away. It might not be as exclusive as it has been the last year, but it's not going away.
Now, you mentioned that you have 2 books behind you. What are the books and what are they about?
Okay, the white and blue book back there is the first book that I wrote, which is actually a novel. It's called Commercial Break, and it's a novel. It's kind of a humorous, suspenseful caper novel that has an advertising setting. It's about an advertising guy who comes up with a scheme to embezzle a lot of money from his clients. It's a lot of fun. And then the white cover with the yellow, you probably can't tell, but it's an upside down umbrella. That's the Smart Storming book. So we actually have a book, Smart Storming, the game-changing process for generating bigger, better ideas. And unfortunately, it's a little bit hard to come by right now because our publisher succumbed to the pandemic. So we're right now transferring it to another publisher. But you can find used copies of it. It's a wonderful book and a great reference for the kind of work that we do.
Okay, so just in summary about Smart Storming, it's such a great name.
Right.
Who can benefit from it? What kinds of organizations are your clients?
Well, because of our backgrounds, my business partner, by the way, Mitchell Ridgey, was my creative partner in advertising a number of years ago, and then we came together and put this business and our process together. We work a lot with marketing teams, branding teams, innovation teams within organizations as big as Under Armour and Google and NBC Universal, but also lots of smaller marketing agencies and things like that. So marketing, because innovative ideas and innovative thinking is a natural fit for us. But we've worked with IT teams, we've worked with management teams, we've worked with software developers, lots of different people. So really anybody that needs to come up with ideas for how to improve and innovate their business on an ongoing basis can benefit from our work. And that's pretty much everybody nowadays. So.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's move from there, because you've had so many extraordinary career highlights. But tell me about, I have a personal interest. How do I get my voice ready for speaking in this medium or speaking in public? I know that naturally our bodies our vocal cords tend to contract and we become tense. I know my voice tends to get higher in pitch because my vocal cords are tense. And most people don't know how to breathe, and so they don't expand their lung capacity, and they're likely to be short of breath when they start speaking. What are some of the exercises as a professional singer that you recommend?
Yeah, and of course, this is a big topic, and we could talk about it for a long time. But some of the key things is I always encourage everybody. There's nothing magical about your vocal cords. Your vocal cords are a muscle. They're a very small, delicate muscle, but it's a muscle. It's a muscle. It's actually not multiples. It's one. So your larynx, your voice box. So just like any muscle that you were going to work out and use, you want to warm it up. Just as if you were going to go for a run, you want to stretch a little bit, you want to warm up, you want to get the blood flowing. You don't have to do vocal exercises to the degree that an opera singer would do them before you go into a Zoom meeting. It's not necessary, but you do want to use the voice. So just gently making sounds at all different levels of pitch. So, I mean, it sounds crazy, but just using your voice at all different levels, using your lips and your tongue, you know, mama. That's why singers do things like mama, 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 but just to loosen up your tongue and your lips a little bit. That's the biggest thing. And in terms of breathing, Rosemary, really using your voice effectively is all about doing everything you can to stay relaxed up here and let down here do the work. So if you breathe into your abdomen, right? If you feel like you're taking a full breath and then allowing that breath to come out, you're going to put less wear and tear on your throat. Keep your throat and your mouth as relaxed as possible, and use your abdomen in order to support the voice. So just things like that. Keeping drinking warm liquids can help keep warmth down there and keep the blood flowing. So, but really just warming up gently and easily before you have to use your voice.
Wonderful. So something warm, like a warm tea or hot water.
Yeah, remember that the liquid doesn't actually get to your vocal cords. If it did, you would be choking to death. But the warmth in your throat can certainly help keep the blood flowing and help keep circulation going. So yeah, it can definitely help a little bit, but nothing. There's nothing magic about what you're going to drink getting to your cords and like cleaning them off or anything like that.
Oh darn!
Right. If only
a little brush down there. And
if only it were that easy. Believe me.
That's wonderful, Keith. I know you're going to leave us with some tips, so that people love to take away something, and I know that every one of these Makeover Mondays is designed to leave people with something they can put into action right away. Right. I'm going to ask you to give us your top 3 tips for today, and you've given them to me in advance, and so I'm going to show the first one.
And this is the first one. We mentioned this before, but I want to urge everybody: optimize your audio. Don't underestimate the impact that your audio quality, positive or negative, can have on the effectiveness of your meeting or your presentation. Okay.
And number 2.
Always look into the lens. I know you've heard this before. It takes practice. It takes training. But when you're looking into the lens, you're looking into your audience's eyes. Ironically, if you're looking at your audience, you're not looking at your audience, right? I'm looking at Rosemary right now, but it doesn't look like it. So try to train yourself that when you're speaking, look directly into that camera lens, and you're going to be making much better contact and engagement with your audience.
Correct. And number 3.
And hopefully I modeled this today, but consider adding, not coming back down, but actually adding a little extra energy to your voice and your body when you're presenting virtually. We've already discussed this. This is a very low-key, low-energy environment platform. We need to do something to help ramp up the energy so that we keep our audiences engaged and involved. So don't be afraid to use a little more volume or a little more energy, a little more motion. It's going to help your presentation a lot.
Excellent. What do you think about standing versus sitting?
Well, I think that has a lot to do with the presenter. Look, there's a great deal to be said for the energy that you get when you're on your feet and you stand up, and a lot of people really benefit from that. So that's great. I might benefit from that, but I do kind of feel like I've done this enough that I am capable of putting that energy in. But if you find that it's too difficult for you to ramp up that energy seated, standing up might help a lot. So give it a try, see if it works.
Wonderful. Keith, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, they can certainly come to my website, keithharmeyer.com, and or my company site, smartstorming.com. Either one of those have contact forms on them. So, and people can learn more about the work that we do at Smart Storming and the programs that we offer.
Excellent. Keith, this time went so quickly. There's so many great topics to talk about. I hope you'll come back and join me again. And congratulations on all the great work you do. And I hope that you continue to be smart storming away and really opening up our ways of thinking and innovating. Thank
Perfect.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Rosemary. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
A pleasure. A pleasure. And I want to remind everybody that if you want to check your aptitude, your Zoom IQ, I do have the Zoom score, which is on my website at rosemaryravenel.com. You can check your ability against the top 10 attributes that define a professional Zoom meeting. So there you go. Please join me again on Monday. I'm going to have someone talking about how to MC and how to be a great panelist on Zoom. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Keith. Have a great week.
Thanks, Rosemary.